Workers losing conditions. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Finishing off my stein of coffee, I thought we'd have a look at this article from news.com.au discussing the potential for workers, I'll move it over here, to lose conditions. There's a new wave of discussions regarding industrial relations where the Prime Minister Scott Morrison wants to reach out to the unions. And one question that's been asked is, will the so-called boot test, better off overall test, I'm assuming that, better off overall test, will that be at risk? Now, a video interview I did recently with Stuart Bonds, where we discuss the casual workers in the coal mining industry and how their conditions, a lot of them were paid worse off than the boot test. They were below the award. And that's just all coming out to light now, and just the connection to the union movement and how, well, the union movement approved a lot of these conditions is pretty terrible. So the question about this, boot test, I'm used to calling it the fairness test. We'll have to see how it all happens. Now, my own biases, guys. I am, inherently more towards independence and agency for individuals rather than collectivism. For those of you that have watched my channel, you would be shocked, I imagine. Not at all. My father was an immigrant here to Australia, and I'm only child, firstborn, so I'm pretty stereotypical in those regards to be an advocate for independence and agency as opposed to collectivism. Now, from that, I would be quite skeptical, or I appreciate that all of these interventions into the market create unemployment. So they create this messy situation where you have people who've been privileged by all of these interventions, these awards, these market factors which have created unemployment, then complaining about people getting welfare and all this. And there's two sides to the story, everyone. I would honestly argue that we need to reduce some of the complexities put into our workplace system and allow people the power to negotiate on their own behalf. But I also understand we're living in a world now where there are businesses that are so big and so large that they pretty much there is a lack of equality in power between the two parties. You're getting a behemoth organization which can, the example in casual mining, you're getting a behemoth organization which was paying people below award. They didn't pass the boot test. And if you complained, there were 1.1 million people behind them lining up. There were 1.1 million people behind them lining up. So I can appreciate the need for workers who are in that situation to collectively bargain, to collectively argue. So it's an interesting situation. Let's say, I appreciate the idealistic sides of both arguments, and we need to meet somewhere in the middle. So let's have a look at this, because frankly, I think this entire process, this entire reaching out is going to be a big mess. And my concern is they will remove the boot test. And then all of the potential legal ramifications here of these organizations, which are in bed with the unions and politicians, may no longer be liable to those conditions in the past. Do you think that could happen? Do you think that could be the reasoning behind all of this? Or am I just putting my tinfoil hat on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, everyone. So, workers could face cuts to penalty rates, wages, and some conditions to save jobs under changes to workplace laws the Prime Minister is considering. The Prime Minister confirmed on Friday that he was open to dumping the boot test, the better off overall test, that governs the nation's enterprise bargaining agreements. It ensures that enterprise bargaining agreements do not rip off workers and undercut the award for their job that would otherwise apply. Asked if he was considering dumping the protection, Mr. Morrison said the best protection for workers was a job. And I know one thing, if you're not in a job, you're not better off. If you lose your job, you're not better off, he said. Well, he's right. The problem with all of these interventions, guys, Creates unemployment. It disincentivizes people from employing. They'll automate, they'll offshore, they'll find other ways around it. It's just reality, guys. It's how businesses are. I know many, many people that offshore. I face it in my competitors, offshoring drafting work overseas. And that's the first rung in my profession in architecture. For a lot of people, you need to do the drafting. So, and my concern is if we keep going down the path that we're going down and have a discussion that is constrained in a whole range of ways based on things that used to be the norms, then people are going to lose their jobs. He's right. He is right. I don't think it'll work out like he hopes. I think Australians are too used to the privileges that they've received in their employment. I honestly think so, and I think they're not willing to give it up. People don't want to sacrifice, particularly if they see the big end of town getting all these government stimulus, government handouts, all of this left, right, and center, particularly because wage growth has been in the gutter for forever, and people are struggling just to buy houses. It's going to seem really unfair, isn't it? Really is. I would suggest we need special economic regions where we implement similar things. Or we have a certain part of the country or a certain city where the boot test doesn't apply. But then you also have, okay, people are sacrificing these conditions, but they receive this other incentive to offset it. Maybe it's a region where taxation is significantly decreased, where cost of living is significantly decreased, where petrol costs, all these taxes that are taking money out of people's lives are reduced to offset this, so business can be more active, can create more jobs, and there can be a better overall growth in the economy. Do you reckon they'll talk about those suggestions, guys? Do you think that's on the table? I don't think so. I'd hope there would be. I really hope there would be. So, and they won't be better off. So I'm interested in making Australians come out of the pandemic crisis where millions have less hours and over 1 million don't even have a job. And I want to make them better off. And that's why the industrial relation changes that I hope to come out of this consultative and good faith process will deliver changes that will keep people in jobs, that will get people back in jobs. Because when you're in a job, you're better off. And that's better off that I'm interested in. He's right. I agree with him there. You are better off in a job. You're better off in a job. It's better for your confidence. It's better for your self-esteem. Some people would want jobs, would be willing to work for less than the award. I bet you. And you've got to realize I'm thinking of this from the perspective of a small business owner. Lots of small business owners take risks. They work for long periods with no money, all for the hope of making more over time, or even just having the freedom and independence to not be under the jackboot of someone. Even unions have expressed a willingness in recent weeks to consider the better off overall test after the unemployment rate doubled in the wake of the pandemic. Sure it is. Sure. Nothing to do with the fact that they may be exposed to their own links to all these businesses that weren't passing the boot test, where unions had signed awards that didn't pass the boot test. Sure. They're willing to come to the table. The ACTU Secretary Sally McManus has raised concerns about the boot holding up agreements, but it's not suggested lowering workers' wages and conditions. Employers have been worried that measuring that just holds up the whole bargaining process, she told ABC Radio this week. I can understand if everyone has reached agreement and you have to wait a long time for that agreement to even be approved. There's something that in business mind, well, it's not very effective and that's getting in the way of us doing things, so we have some sympathy for that position. She's never run a business. I've checked her out on LinkedIn. She's never run a business. But former ACTU Assistant Secretary Tim Lyons told news.com.au that getting rid of the better off overall test would hurt workers. The way the boot test is, it ensures that if you are under an agreement, you don't get less than the award. It's not that complicated, he said. Here's the thing. He's right, but that creates unemployment. It's intervention in the market. It's that simple. It's that simple. Would you want more people unemployed or more people working? There's your question. And it's that simple. This causes it. Prime Minister flagged this week he wants to bring unions to the negotiating table to consider options for workplace reform. He flagged a focus on casual workers and how to ensure they have a roadmap to part-time or permanent status and holiday pay when they are effectively working full-time or regular hours over a long time. While workers have a right to request to convert to permanent work, it is not always happening. Well, sometimes businesses can't afford it, or they don't want to take on that responsibility. Because then, when you flip someone to casual, guys, to permanent, you have to start holding away all that money that you're paying for them. You have to hold your holiday, hold this, hold that, hold that. People should be getting less for security. What is it? A couple of weeks? A couple of months? Is it because people don't have the financial literacy to save that money when they're on casual? They should be getting more money on casual. But here's the thing, some people aren't. We've seen that in the mining industry. Some employers have been hit hard by claims for back pay after the Fair Work Tribunal found staff were effectively owed holiday leave and sick leave because they clearly were permanent workers regardless of the contract they were signing. That's okay, that's just in this one sector, and it didn't pass the boot test. They're not mentioning that, are they? The number of enterprise bargaining agreements in Australia rose rapidly since the introduction in the 90s, but have fallen over the last decade to just over 10,000. Current agreements now cover just 12.8% of the private sector workforce after a Fair Work decision that every individual worker had to be better off than the award. As a result, many retailers and fast food outlets were forced to dump the practice of trading penalty rates for higher hourly rates because it might leave individual workers worse off. McDonald's and Domino's no longer use enterprise agreements and have shifted staff back to the award. Bunnings has also abandoned plans to strike an enterprise bargaining agreement, a decision that could change if the boot test was modified. I mean, here you go. What would you rather if you're working in fast food? Would you want penalty rates or just a higher overall rate? One option to simplify the better off overall test is a return to a protection that was closer to the Keating government's original no disadvantage test that was less complex. While the Labour Party has previously opposed the removal of the boot prior to the pandemic, Labour leader Anthony Albanese was non-committal on Friday. I'm aware the discussions which take place. What I do say is out of any process, workers shouldn't be left worse off. It's that simple. We need to have a bargaining framework whereby we can have a win-win because productivity is going backwards for employers and wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living for employees. The system quite clearly isn't working at the moment. It's intervention in the market, guys. It's never going to work. It's just another step in the central planning approach. I'd like to see other methods. I think, SCRs with special conditions and then compare it and contrast it to the rest of the civilization as a test case. Why not? It's all voluntary. Allow people to do it. We'll have to see, guys. What do you think about all of this? Do you think it's just coincidence after these fair work rulings? Do you think people are going to put up with it? Or do you think it's just going to be more conditions taken away from the little guys? We'll have to wait and see, everyone. As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you'd like to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care. I'll see you next time.